say hello to everyone. My name is Akhil, and I'm the co-founder of Green Story, and welcome to this very special webinar series on the new normal. The purpose of the series was to really help anyone that's in the eco-fashion space to navigate and come out stronger given the challenges of COVID-19. And we're really pleased to host this great panel today. And joining us are 4 leaders in the eco-fashion space who will be talking about the difficult task of marketing in the era of COVID-19, especially if you're a smaller brand. If you have any questions, feel free to type them out in the question box on Zoom, and we'll get to them after the discussion. If you want to take part in the discussion online, please use the hashtag #NewNormal or tag us at Green Story Inc. Just to quickly introduce myself, I have 13 years of experience in the sustainability space, having previously worked on carbon offsets, consumer sustainability, mergers and acquisitions, as well as corporate strategy. I co-founded Green Story 5 years ago to help consumers make more sustainable choices. And our vision at Green Story is to enable every consumer in the world to ask, what's my impact, before they make a purchase. As a company, we work with brands ranging from startups to global giants to measure the impact of their supply chains and visualize it for their customers. On the right, you'll find a quick example of what we do. This is the product page of one of our clients, No Nasties. We have calculated the impact of the organic cotton items, compared it against a conventional item, and shown it at point of sale through clear and arresting infographics. And I would like to thank everyone that's joining me on this great panel today. And our moderator is Katie Boothby-Kung. Katie is a senior marketer of social impact at Shopify. By working closely with social impact businesses, she's able to build educational tools and provide platform support to launch and grow a successful social enterprise. Katie is also the founder of the Copper Root Collective, an eco-conscious bath and skincare company that's based in Ottawa, where 100% of the profits go directly to water projects in Zambia. So that's marketing and impact combined. With that being said, it's all yours, Katie.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Akhil. Good morning, everyone. And welcome to the Green Story panel on marketing for green SMEs. We're so excited to have you here. It's going to be a really great morning. So let me just quickly introduce our panelists. We have Lauren Harmon from Fashion United. You want to say a quick hello?
Yeah, definitely. So as Katie said, I'm Lauren. I'm from Fashion United, and I'm a senior international account manager there.
Awesome. So glad to have you on the panel.
Thank you.
And we have Eric Dales from Tamga Designs. Before he says hello, I just want to say a quick shout out. I am wearing Tamga Design right now, so love them. So you want to say a quick hi, Eric?
Yeah, hi everybody. So as Katie said, Eric, Tamga Design, co-founder of Tamga Designs and operations director. We're a Shopify business as well, proudly Canadian, proudly Shopify business as well. And do you want to do a little about the company yet, Katie, or?
Yeah, we'll say that for question number 1. I'm going to just introduce Christal, and then we'll get right into all about your brands. So, and then we have Christal Earle from Brave Souls. Welcome to the panel.
Thanks. Excuse me, sorry. My name is Christal Earle, and I'm the founder of Brave Souls, and we are handcrafted sandals with upcycled tire soles, and we use all elements of upcycled material in all of our designs. And we are proudly Shopify, a Shopify brand. We use the Shopify platform, and we're also a partner with Green Story, which is really amazing. So very proud.
Awesome. Welcome, welcome. And last but not least, and you know him very well, we have Akhil Sivanandan.
Hi, everyone. I'm not going to introduce myself again.
We can just jump right to the questions. This is so awesome. So I'm sure many audience members are familiar with the brands on the panel, but perhaps you can each take just a minute to tell us about yourself, your business, your practices, and things like that. And we can start with Lauren.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so as I said before, I'm a senior international account manager at Fashion United, and what I do in my role is I help our partners with their content marketing strategies and their online storytelling. And in terms of Fashion United, what we are the global platform for news that's about the fashion industry, and that's really geared towards fashion and retail professionals. And in addition to that, we also work on employer branding for a lot of the huge online companies and offline companies. Yeah. There you go.
Awesome. Thank you. Eric, how about you?
Okay, I'm just unmuting because our warehouse has a weird boiler system where there's a lot of noise. So apologies if there's something in the background, some clanging. So yeah, like I said before, co-founder of Tamga Designs. We are a Canadian sustainable fashion company that was started 4 years ago in Dhaka, Bangladesh, where we were living, myself and my wife, now wife, were living. And we created Tamga really to have a positive example in the fashion industry. And to prove that you could create great, exciting clothing from the world's best sustainable materials. So we went about starting the company by building a supply chain from the raw material all the way up to the finished product. We work with makers across Indonesia. Yeah, we take pride in basically creating exciting fashion in the most transparent way possible. So we've been working with Green Story since day one. And like I said, with Shopify since day one as well.
Awesome. Christal?
So yeah, so as the founder of Brave Souls, I was inspired for what we do because I've worked for years. I was a humanitarian worker for years, and I worked with people in particular in landfills in many different parts of the world. I like the glamour gigs. And in particular, I worked in Dominican Republic for the last 15 years. And so it was my work there and seeing the tires that were there, and the tires are obviously, they're a biohazard. We don't even know how long it's going to take for them to really actually biodegrade completely. And it was also in response to health crises that they were causing because of dengue. Mosquitoes breed in the standing water of the tires. And so that really sparked an interest in me to begin to think about how to use fashion for good. And so we partnered with Green Story and Shopify right from the beginning as well. But in particular with Green Story, one of the things that we wanted to be able to track was how it's one thing to say we're doing this, but to be able to actually show people this is exactly the impact of your purchase. And so we just believe that fashion should be fair right from the point of where it's being made. And for us, that is actually when the tires are being pulled out of the garbage dump. Those people should be being paid fairly for what they're doing, right through to the end consumer should be paying a fair price for it.
Wow, that's so awesome. Thank you. And Akhil, how about you? I know you kind of gave a little bit about Green Story, but do you want to kind of dive in a little bit into some of the work that you're doing with some amazing brands like these guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea behind Green Story was always to help people make greener choices. And my background before Green Story, I was very corporate. I worked in corporate sustainability. I worked with the government on carbon offsets, and the pace of getting things done is a bit different. So for me, Green Story kind of arose out of that frustration, because I felt like if we show people what the impact is, and if we actually start with the consumers by giving them better information, they will make greener choices. And with that, like companies, governments would change. And that was like the whole ethos behind Green Story. And we really wanted to also start with good data, because one thing we found that was there, especially in the fashion space, was there's too much fluff that people are talking about, because it's really hard to measure impact. So we came up with a way to do it, like, in a quickly and cost-effective way, so that, companies that were starting off, like Eric's and Christal's company, could afford it, and at the same time present it to consumers in a way that makes sense for them. And Eric and Christal were like the early believers in Green Story. We didn't have too many clients and almost none in the fashion space at the time, but they proved that the system worked, that if you show consumers what the impact is, they're more likely to make a sustainable choice. And that's what we do with mostly fashion brands at this point. About 95% of our clients are in fashion. It's kind of calculate the impact of the supply chains, compare it against conventional items, and show it at point of sale, just all throughout the customer journey. And the idea is to show people the why. Why are they out here shopping with a green brand like Tamga or Brave Souls, and show that impact.
That's awesome. So let's jump into some of the meat of the questions. Just for our audience, we're gonna be asking questions, but for the panelists, jump in. I want this to have like a conversation feel, like we're all sitting in our lovely living rooms like we are now, and we're just kind of hanging out and chatting with each other. So feel free, don't wait for your name to be called by me, just jump right in and kind of have some really great discussions. And what we're kind of uncovering for the audience today is we're going to be talking a lot about kind of what are the shifts that we're seeing now that COVID-19 is happening, and what are some of the trends we're seeing? What are some of the ways that brands are coping, particularly in the marketing space? So let's get right to it. So during this crazy time, what do you see to be the biggest shifts in consumer behavior, and how is this affecting sustainable brands like yourself?
I can go first.
Love it.
I think it was different for kind of depending on where you were geographically and where you're really and what your brand is about. But for us in Brave Souls, basically the middle of March, it felt from the middle of March till about the third week of April, it felt like there was like a total shock wave that went across everything, and people were just in shock. And for us, that meant almost everything came to a complete standstill. And the one thing about when you are a mission-driven brand and you understand that you have a goal and you have a purpose and you have a clear reason of why you're doing what you're doing, I think it's easier to be able to stay in front of people, to stay connected to them, but not in the sense that you're trying to, like buy your stuff. You're positioning yourself, and you yourself are offering yourself as a resource for them to take this time, because now everybody's stuck at home. And I find that everything from like open rates on emails to like the times that people are actually like on social media or whatever, it's just like, I was just trying things just to entertain myself to see what would happen if you send them at different times. And like the open rates were the same. So it tells you that people have a lot more, they're seeking and they're searching out for more. I think it's almost like an existential reflection of an existential crisis that a lot of people are going through at the same time as they're looking for something more. And this is actually a time of great opportunity for us to really hone our messaging too.
Mm.
So I guess, yeah, I could jump into as a second brand perspective on that. I think that we've been speaking to a lot of our different kind of partners and different brands that we know and mentors in the industry. And what Christal was saying about really things falling off a cliff in March, and then really kind of picking, like people settling into a kind of at-home life in April, and continuing to this day, we've really seen that there was, as an online business especially, I mean, this doesn't relate as much to being a sustainable business because it's very different in retail if you're in person or online, of course. But as an online business, it's been a really interesting time, and it's opened doors to do a lot more storytelling, to do a lot more community building, and really interacting with our customers, because, on the internet, there's a very short attention span at all times. And it's anytime you can get people who are a little bit more engaged, that's nice. And that's what we're seeing right now. So there's been that huge shift online and consumer behavior. I can't see it going back to whatever normal was, which wasn't really normal. It was always shifting towards online. What I would see and what I would expect is that people are more comfortable after this pandemic than they've ever been purchasing online. And, I think that means that in-person retailers as well will have to basically step their online game up and be truly kind of omni-channel. I think that the second big shift is that people, like, I don't want to say that everybody wants to do good things and have a positive impact on the world now, but like Christal was saying as well, there's a lot of self-reflection that's been going on. A lot of people are sitting at home. We've all had it, kind of wondering, how can I help? What can I do? And, it is apparent that when you're buying a product from a brand and you're going to the trouble of buying it online and getting it shipped to you, and you're going to wait a few days, I think it's worthwhile to really support the brands that you believe in. So in the case of, Christal, she can speak, we're talking before about this, about her makers and how she's continuing to support her makers during this time, whether they're working or not. For Tamga, we are continuing to do the same thing, basically we work with other businesses, but dealing with the delays, dealing with the shift work that they're doing, and when they're out of the office, like at the moment, closed for a month, our fabric mills in Indonesia, and just pushing through that. So I think that's a huge shift. People are going to recognize that you can vote with your dollars and have a real impact.
Totally. Lauren, Akhil?
Yeah, definitely. I think that obviously it's no secret that retail has been hit very hard. And we see that in our conversations with all the different partners that we work with. But in terms of consumers, I think they're expecting a lengthy impact of the COVID-19 crisis on their expenditure, but also on their daily routines. And that is, as Eric also said, going to kind of create a shift in, values and where do you want to put your money? And you do see people mobilizing to try to help kind of local businesses, green businesses, and they want to feel like they can make a difference and that their money can make a difference, right? But in general, I think people are becoming more and more aware of our impact on the environment, on business, and I think they're willing to make more conscious decisions. And obviously, time will tell how that's going to unfold. But I think right now people want to feel like they have a connection with these small businesses. They want to see that their money is going towards something good and that they're actually helping out people and not just businesses.
I can kind of jump in and kind of look at it from a purely brand perspective because we work with so many mission-driven brands. It's the idea of storytelling, and both Eric and Christal touched upon that it's becoming more and more important whether you're a sustainable brand or not. Like people are like reading more and engaging more. So there are only so many products you can browse. At some point, you really want to look at the story and the why behind the brand. And the advantage then is that for a mission-driven brand, you have more ammo in a sense of you have a better story to tell, you have a more heartfelt story to tell, and that's really connecting with consumers. So what I'm seeing is beyond the initial shock. March was just a shock for everybody. Everybody's like, oh my God, world's gonna end. Let's just stop everything. We're all gonna go bankrupt. But after that happened, once April came in and things started, normalizing a little bit to what, to use an inappropriate term at this point, but people started realizing that the sustainable brands have a greater story to tell, and they started engaging with them more. So that's what I'm finding a lot in the market right now, that these brands tend to be thriving a bit more. And they also, whether it's by the nature of the setup that they have or by their mission status, they're also more open to collaboration. And I think that's something that's really key right now in this market, the ability to collaborate and bring people together and just kind of tell that story. And as a mission-driven enterprise, you're more about the mission rather than purely about like, that guy's going to take my market share, so let's not ever talk to them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. We'll get into collaboration a little bit later. But do you guys think this idea of being more generous and buying from sustainable brands is a trend that you think will stick post-COVID? Or do you think it's kind of like people are feeling generous now, but once we're all released from our homes, we're going to go back?
Well, I think we're going to see a dichotomy when it comes to this. And from the media side, we can definitely attest to this. But I think as a whole that people will continue trying to connect on that local level. But what we're seeing, and we've actually reported some stories on that as well, that some of these, with the restrictions becoming more loose now and kind of countries opening up and retail shops being open, we're also seeing people almost purging themselves, almost like they've missed something the past few months and now they're going for it. So these huge lines outside of these fast fashion retailers. And so I really do think it's going to be a mix, although I do think that there will be a greater all-round awareness. And also this sense that, where before for some people, being green, being sustainable was considered almost like a trend. I think in reevaluating people's, morals and values and standards when it comes to these things, people are going to realize it's a lifestyle at this point.
I also think that so much of this comes down, and Akhil touched on this a little bit, so much of this comes down to content and the ability to tell a story as a brand, but I don't even really mean necessarily the ability to tell your story. I mean the ability to invite people into a story that they can participate in, because it kind of comes back, how I see it is, it kind of comes back to that core essential need of humanity, that we want to have a sense of purpose. We want to have a sense of meaning. And when we as brands, there's all kinds of ways that we could do all these flash things, but when you at the core are just authentic about wanting to connect with people and give them something that gives them a sense of meaning, whether it's like they bought a dress from Tamga, and it's just like every time they put it on, or someone says, hey, that's a great dress. They're like, hey, let me tell you about this brand, or whatever it is. Like people want, they want to have meaning. It's like the same, how when girls will say, the thing I remember when I was a teenager and a young adult is like, hey, those are a great pair of jeans. And you'd say, thanks, they were so cheap. That was the thing. You always wanted to brag about the price. But we have an opportunity as a brands to give them a better story, to tell themselves about what they own and what they're getting behind. And that's the key. And that's not difficult. It's just allowing your brand to just authentically own what it does.
Yeah, I mean, I agree totally with Lauren and Christal here that it's, I would kind of, the way I think about this is that it's up to us as ethical or sustainable or conscious brands to continue stepping our game up. In regards to like our competition is an industry that is unsustainable. In that case, we need to make sure that, at the very root of it, that the best people are starting businesses that are more conscious when they're starting a business out of business school or whatever. And then we have to make sure that our design, that our marketing, that our communication is on point, and that we're telling the real story. Because scratching the surface or doing a little kind of greenwashing campaigns, those don't have long-term stickiness. Those are a good way maybe to do a quick promotion and get some quick sales. What we need to do is basically demonstrate the viability of a more sustainable business model. There's been some really great books written on this. There's been some pioneers, people like Yvon Chouinard from Patagonia, who've been doing it for years and years and years. It is possible, and we need to be able to deliver that in a digestible, understandable way to consumers. And it, so happens that that's why Green Story has been such an important partner to our businesses, because literally, we know that we don't have we don't have a whole paragraph to explain to consumers why they should care about us, because there's so many options out there. What we have is we have to be able to be on our game, give them something like metrics, like here's exactly what your impact is. This isn't rocket science. This is the work that we've done. It's available to you. It looks great. Go for it. So as long as we continue to step our game up and to compete with the unsustainable side, then I think after this that consumer behavior can continue. But I think it depends on what, how we act as sustainable brands.
Yeah, and it's all about that building that habit as well. Now consumers are out there asking the questions, and it takes 3 months to put a habit in place. So after 3 months, they would continue asking those questions. You have the pay up campaign that's really affecting a lot of the big brands as well, because people are seeing there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and they want to know more, and they want to work with brands that are more ethical in how they behave with their supply chains, with the people that they work with. So that's something that's, I believe it's going to stick, but it's only going to stick, like what Eric and Christal and Lauren said, if the brands play to their strengths and actually talk about their story and help consumers to believe in it. Right, just kind of see like this is a viable alternative. This is something, the products that you buy from sustainability is not, the old hippie stuff anymore. It looks good, it's good quality, and it can really has a story behind it. So I can talk about this with my friends and not just say, this is a cheap $10 t-shirt from somewhere.
Yeah, that's really important. I love this talk about storytelling. So when it comes to storytelling, have you guys had to pivot that due to the changing circumstances? And maybe what are ways are your brands educating consumers on industry best practices in sustainability, despite there being a global pandemic? So yeah, how have you guys had to shift your storytelling practices? Or have you? Maybe that's another question.
I guess I can hop on this and switch up the order a bit, but yeah, like the very little as a small brand that's very dynamic. Very little happens as a sit down and here's our big change and there's the shift and and that's how it happens. Basically, what we've seen when we look back on the last 6 weeks is that at Tamga, we have shifted our storytelling quite a bit. For one thing that we did when we saw because as I was alluding to before, my partner and I, Yana, we lived in Dhaka for 3 years, and that's where really the idea and the passion for Tamga was born, because we were working in and around the fashion industry and seeing some of the conditions that were there, and we found it to be completely unacceptable as kind of Canadian consumers from that mindset. When we saw this Pay Up campaign come out, and the reality that a lot of brands were, there was around like $3 billion that I saw in POs, purchase orders, that were being canceled, and in a lot of cases the goods had already been produced. We went, look, I mean, it wasn't a surprise to us because we've seen everything that happens over there and the disconnect between the brands and the makers. But the way we went about it is, okay, well, for Fashion Revolution, which was also happening around the same time, why don't we just honestly give updates from our makers? So from our fabric mills and our packaging suppliers and our sewing factories, we got them to take photos with, the best photos they could take at the time with their phones. Like, we're always on WhatsApp with them anyways. Photos of the people that are making and the people that are working, and a little anecdote on, what's going on, how are you dealing with this? And we decided to share, how we are approaching working with our makers at this time, because we're not going to cancel our orders. Definitely there's been delays all over the place. There's been cost increases. Our fabric mills at the moment are completely shut down. So we're doing some workarounds there. But the main thing is that, we were saying, look, this is a real breathing supply chain. And as a brand, we feel responsible for, a part of those jobs within the supply chain. And therefore, we're doing some give and take with the people that are working in the supply chain. A second part there is basically we've started to do a lot of content. My partner, Yana, who does all of the social media with our great intern, Brooke, and does a lot of our content. A lot of our content started being around practical things you can do from home. For example, on Earth Day, it was about climate action. What climate actions can you take from home? We found that there were actually way more than we thought that you could literally do just from sitting at home, like things like obviously changing banks and things like, relating to energy and relating to how you deal with household waste and your purchasing practices. So that's where a lot of our storytelling and our content shifted to more practical things people can do given the circumstances.
I agree. And Eric, I just wanted to say that most of my business actually happens on WhatsApp as well when you're working with people. Who knew it would become a major business tool? For us, one of the things that we did, so people were first of all curious, like what you said, Eric, to know what was going on with our makers. And so we would do like meet their families, and because they're at home just like everybody else. But I have a group of sustainable fashion business friends, and we created our own little collective. And we began to just take turns, and we called it Good People Doing Good Things. And we just began to take turns sharing each other's story with our audience on social, and helping each other, and doing it to serve the people that were following us, to give them insights, because so much that happens in sustainable fashion is it's someone else's dream, and it always has a really amazing genesis story, because there was an aha moment in them that drew them to start this business in the first place. And those are really inspiring. And so we just began to see it as this is a chance for us to inspire other people, because the goal that we're all on the same team. We're all part of something where we actually want to leave the earth better than when we inherited it. We want to be able to give something more, we want to be able to give something to our children and to our children's children. And a part of that is serving the people that want to be a part of what we're doing. So that's kind of where what that meant for us. And the response for that was really, it was amazing. And it still continues to be amazing, because I'm finding it's so encouraging for us as brands to hear each other's stories too. Nobody is an island, and it's really important for people even to come to something like this and to hear other people's stories and to connect and find out what people are doing out there, because we all play such a special role in building something bigger.
Great.
I love that.
Yes, definitely. I agree with what both of you guys are saying. And I kind of want to loop back to what Eric was saying about the supply chain. I think that when it comes to the storytelling right now, transparency is everything. And I think you guys are at an advantage, especially, these companies who are green, who are sustainable, because of the transparency in supply chains. Whereas, what we're seeing on our end is that there are companies who are positioning themselves as these great champions. They're helping frontline workers, they're creating masks. Yet on the same time, they're canceling their orders and they're not paying the people who are creating their orders. So that's an interesting part of the storytelling that's happening. But I think the people who stick the most are the ones who are sharing these authentic stories, who are sharing their knowledge and informing people. Because even if people right now may not have the budget to make, purchases, it will stick with them, kind of the stories that connect with them and their values. So I think that sustainability as a whole is very interesting. From our end at Fashion United, the articles that we have about sustainability are some of our most read articles online. So you can tell that there's a curiosity there for people. They want to know more. And it's all just about being clear in your messaging and put your money where your mouth is and really stick to what you are preaching. Or don't preach it, because the truth does come out. And you find that these bigger corporations, they have this legacy, whereas companies who are coming to the table and are very clear, they can almost start from a clean slate, right? They're not under the microscope as some of these bigger companies are, because their bad practices do come out in due time. So being clear, being honest, and being transparent with consumers is the way to go, and the way to go in your storytelling.
Yeah, absolutely. I think transparency is such an important aspect. And one of the first things that we did when, we got word that this crisis is going to be much bigger than we imagined was reach out to a lot of our core customers. Eric, Christal, we had conversations directly with them. And we kind of realized the importance of the collaboration aspect of all of this from our marketing perspective as well, and to really highlight the stories of our clients, because everybody we work with is hyper transparent and really talking about the impact just by virtue of doing business with Green Story, because we publish the report and we do all the analysis, so you don't have too much of a choice. You have to be transparent. So once we reached out, a few things happened in those initial few days. One is like everybody was hyper willing to collaborate and really wanted to reach out and understand what's going on. Second is the traffic on our website spiked. And to me, this was a great indication, because we don't do too much of like outside marketing or ads or anything. But to me, it was a great indicator that there is definitely a need for this, and people are searching for transparency. People are searching for true sustainability. And the idea for like even this webinar series, which is a very collaborative experience, thanks to people like all of you, it came through one of our clients, through ThreadUp, actually, through a discussion we had with Sam Blumenthal, who was in the first panel with ThreadUp. And she's like, what will the new normal look like? And then we said, what if we have a webinar series and we call all these smart people and talk about that? So that's definitely something that's really changing right now. People do want to look at being more transparent and how to kind of do that as a brand and as a customer, and also be more collaborative. And one of the results of that, at least from our side, is like we're trying to kind of showcase our customers more on social media as much as possible. The other aspect is also, we're trying to build out a system of tools which will allow transparency. It's been in development for some time, but one of the things we want to do is just allow people to say scan a QR code and see through the supply chain and see where the impacts and all are within the supply chain. So hopefully that's coming out soon. Development soon, but it's coming out.
Very cool. Yeah, I love that whole idea about transparency. And I even love the discussion around like just being authentic. I'm hearing from bigger brands, one of my favorite commercials is one of them being like, it's COVID-19 and now we're making sure that we're taking care of our employees by giving them PPE. And I'm like, duh. Like, you should be. Like, it just seems so disgenuine and so unauthentic. So yeah, I think that, being true to who you are is going to be really, really important during this time. So let's jump into collaborations. That seems to be a trend that you guys are touching on a lot. So we're starting to see a lot of trends in collaborations online, things like giveaways, cross promotions, that was talked about in this panel. So is collaboration something that your brand has added to their marketing strategy, and you can tell our audience how it's working?
Well, I think I can go first on this. Yes, and I saw a question in the Q&A, and I think I can actually touch on this at the same time, just to give a little insight. With us, our collaboration, because we are primarily e-commerce, but we do have retail partners. And we recognize that our retail partners are, they have a new set of challenges that they're going to have to work through, and our relationship is changing as well. And so we wanted to be able to also connect with them, and we've been asking them, how can we share your story too? Because we're proud to be, like, we're very specific about who we work with, and we're proud to work with them. And I think that collaboration, as long as it's done from a genuine perspective, it's so what, for example, what we did is within our collective, we made the agreement, we didn't do giveaways. We reached out there. One of the powers of working in collaboration is then we leverage that collective power to then reach out to influencers, micro-influencers actually, which is really a great way because they have a high trust level with their followers, and they are the kind of people that we want to have talking about what we're doing anyways, and they help add to the voice. And it's been such a really great lift for us in terms of sales and relationships and connections and networking. And it makes, I think it helps you as a brand, and I know I kind of keep coming back to this, but it helps you remember why what you're doing is important. And I think that in a time such as this, when everything else is so crazy and we don't know what the new normal is even going to be, if you are sure of why you started this and why you want to continue this, I think it helps you to stay on focus, to continue to build your network, and to reach out to other people as well. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the value of collaborations is just in general, it's a good marketing technique in order to basically share audiences and gain exposure, and in most cases, unpaid, but it takes a bit of legwork to do the collaboration, but it is worthwhile. Definitely. And because of that, in the ethical and sustainable industry, there's huge advantages for a small brand because we get to share audiences. I mean, the type of consumer that we're targeting is quite similar, but what Brave Souls is making is very different from what Tamga is making. And we may do a giveaway with like a hat company in Australia that does, sustainable materials and stuff. So in that sense, it's a great way for like a give and take of sharing basically our audiences and gaining exposure. But also, like we've always seen collaboration in a sense, it's been what we've been doing from day one with our supply chain, because in our supply chain, it's like the company that creates our biodegradable bags in Indonesia, like the garment bags. They're a great company that was started by an Indonesian and Australian guy to create, plastic-free packaging. Green Story, from day one, it was like, great, we want to know more about them. Like, we want to prove that we actually that our materials are great and that these garments are truly sustainable. We want to prove it to ourselves, and then we want to prove it to our customers. That's a collaboration too, right? Like another business that's been growing at the same time as us. So, anytime that you can cooperate with another brand that has like-minded values, I think that you learn a ton, and it's almost like adding a team member to both of your businesses. You just get another you get another brain in the room, you get another set of ideas, and it like exponentially just increases your reach and your creative capacity as well in that sense.
That's really awesome. Yeah, I just want to echo that, what Christal was saying about micro-influencers. We recently started working with a couple with Copper Root Collective, and it's just, we're not going for the, 16,000, 100,000, 1 million influencer mark, just because it's hard to get through in those really large audiences. So we've really focused on between 2,000 and 7,000 followers, and we're finding a huge uptick in sales just by working with them. So we found a couple. There's this app called Collaborate. I've only just started using it, so I'm not endorsing it or anything, but we have found a couple micro influencers there. They call themselves the Tinder of brands, matching them with influencers. Anyway, so we found a couple cool ones, and we've just started working with them, but it definitely has really worked. So yeah, don't focus, if for those smaller brands, a lot of the time when you first start out, you really want to get in front of these celebrity style influencers, but really focus on those smaller communities because they have such a niche and they really speak to their audience, and their audience really truly listens to them. So yeah, I just want to echo that point. Lauren, Akhil, do you have anything on the topic of collaboration?
Yeah, I think just quickly, I mean, obviously, you guys are kind of the experts in terms of your own companies when it comes to that, but I think collaboration is not just based on certain categories as well. I think right now, people are really mobilizing their networks. For example, from Fashion United side, we have retail partners who may not be as visible online. How can we connect them with partners of ours who are in digital solutions? And I think it's really just kind of seeing who you have in your network and how you can kind of link up people to help them and to help them through these times, especially.
Yeah, I mean, totally. And we've seen, like, we're a B2B company, so our customers are like brands. One of the things I'm finding to be true is if you're a mission-driven brand, collaborations are much easier because you have a mission and you find people who are aligned with the mission, right? That's your North Star. So it's easier to find the right people, and you're not as concerned about the competition aspect of things if everybody's driving towards the same mission. So we find maybe other technology firms who are in the same space, or even media firms like Fashion United has been a great partner through all of this. They've promoted the webinar series, so thank you for that. And same thing with Shopify and all the other brands that we work with. The idea of collaboration seems to come a lot easier, especially and again, I'm saying this because we are in the eco-fashion space, definitely in the eco-fashion space, having worked in many other industries before. I just find it kind of mind-blowing. Like, we planned this webinar about 2.5 weeks in advance, and how easy it was to get a lot of brands who have a ton of priorities and a lot of other things going on at this time to jump on and talk about what's going on right now and collaborate with other brands to bring this to life. So it's definitely a huge thing that's happening right now. And I think it's a massive advantage that the eco-fashion space has to really kind of get up in front and be more mainstream over the next few months.
Totally. And I think it speaks volumes to you and your team, Akhil. Like, Green Story has built a lot of trust in this space, and you guys are really leading the charge. So I think that people want to get on board because you guys are awesome. Okay, so I'm just looking at the time. I have 2 questions left. So I have one specifically for Lauren, and then a closing question, and then we can go to Q&A. I just want to update everyone who's listening in. So Lauren, what are some trends you're seeing on the media side, and are there more reach outs for PR opportunities and things like that?
Right. So as far as more reach outs in terms of opportunities, I think you see that certain people are utilizing this time actively to start their storytelling, come up with plans for their storytelling. And I'm not just talking about storytelling for right now, but also kind of thinking of the long term. You do see that companies who are all about blatant advertising or monetizing on the current situation, I think that does backfire. Whereas the people who are informing and using their knowledge to kind of share with people, those are the people who are more successful. In terms of kind of thinking in the long term, obviously moving online is key, and you can attest to that as well from Shopify. But I think that the storytelling through different channels is very important. Mm-hmm. So being visible across different channels is essential. But in terms of, these larger companies, and as I mentioned before, in the way that they have this kind of dual storytelling, where on the one hand, they have this very positive side, and then there's the backside to it. I think smaller companies right now can really navigate that and position themselves on the forefront because they have a genuine message and kind of engaging their audience, but also finding kind of new audiences who can really relate to it is what's important. And we're really working actively right now with different customers across different groups. So be it sustainability or digital tools, we're really trying to kind of find out what makes them an interesting knowledge partner for our readers, but also for people who may not be on our platform as well. So there's a shift, but I think right now media is a huge opportunity.
Awesome. Really good advice.
I just want to add just one little thing to that. It's the idea, I think both Eric and Lauren said about the omni-channel, and that's something that's becoming more and more prevalent right now. We were at an accelerator program in the Netherlands at the end of last year, and we interviewed a ton of people. And one of the things we found is, like, nobody has, I only want to learn about sustainability in the sustainability page or story in the story page. They want the information everywhere. So that's something that, especially for a sustainable brand, it's really important to look at. Is like, are you telling your story like are you embedding it everywhere where your customer touches your product or your brand?
Totally. Okay, so last question for all of you. For many smaller brands with limited time, I'm sure there's people on this webinar that are probably the CEO, the fulfillment network, the social media manager. So with folks with limited time and perhaps limited resources, what should be their focus for marketing in the next few months?
Well, why not? I guess I'll jump in. I mean, it's you know, it's not like we're always learning. So it's not like any brand is really an authority, because things are changing so much in terms of marketing. But in my opinion, it would be, I think you really want to go at two things right now, given the circumstances. One of them is customer retention. So, I mean, I think that having, from our perspective, having a good infrastructure for being able to capture the people who do come to your website and who are interested, and be able to communicate with them. So for example, on a more technical marketing side, having a good email infrastructure for getting the email addresses of people who are interested in your brand, and then communicating with them, telling your story through different automations that you can set up, basically saying, okay, here's a little bit more about our materials, here's a bit more about our supply chain, here's our favorite products that we think you might love. You can set up automations for after a person makes a first purchase, re-engaging them. If a person makes a second purchase, you can thank them for making a second purchase. And these aren't, disingenuous things. These are just, when you set up an automation and you really pay attention to it, you can be sure that you are giving all of the information that you should be giving to a person who's basically asking, who's coming to your site, who's interested. So number one, because there's more traffic right now, I would say you do not want to be driving traffic to your website unless you have a good retention infrastructure, because you're leaking money. It's a leaky boat at that point. So number two, I would say, is just community building, which is like the other side of retention, essentially. I mean, right now, because people are more interested, they do have more time perhaps to pay attention to your storytelling. I think that being able to create good content at this time, especially if you have a content plan, content marketing's tough. Any brand has had experience. I mean, obviously Fashion United is like, you guys do content fantastically, but as a smaller brand, creating blogs, you have to put something out there, and sometimes it's not perfect and it doesn't look that great. And, you get like 10 views on it and you're like, wow, that was, hours of my life spent on that. But really, honestly, speaking to people in an honest way about what they can do in their lives right now to have more of an impact, because that's the main question that people are wondering. Like when they come to Brave Souls or Tamga, it's, I am actually interested in having more of an impact with my purchases. If you can create the content to help them on that journey, that's fantastic. One other side to that is that if I would recommend doing your own content, but partnering with other people, other blogs, other media outlets who really do content, like Fashion United, like, we partner with Good On You. We partner with several different blogs and influencers who are amazing at content. They are so good at storytelling and talking about these issues. Partnering with them, giving them a commission on sales, making it worthwhile for both of you, is another way for really community building. And if you're scared of the content, which a lot of us are because we're not pros at it, that's a really good route to go as well. Work with those micro influencers, work with that media who can tell that story as well.
Actually, yeah. Sorry, go for it.
Sorry, Lauren, you go first.
Well, I just wanted to kind of jump into what you were saying about, maybe not being the pros in terms of content. I think that may feel that way, but on the other hand, you guys are the pros in the realm of business you're doing, right? So it can be your specific USP, whether it is the use of, the rubber, the tires, or the different materials you're using. You guys are pros in that arena. So storytelling should really be driven by the knowledge that you guys have about that kind of topic. People think that, just sharing stories online isn't going to get results. We get questions all the time like, well, if I share a story about this topic, how am I going to have new leads? right? But I don't think you have to think about it in a quick conversion, like telling one story is going to get you new leads and all of a sudden your business is going to be exploding. You have to think about it as creating this engagement among readers, and actually across any board, engagement is what is going to drive people to choose you time and time again. So it drives better relationships, and it drives relationships in the long term. So in terms of coming up with a strategy, little tidbits of information, but continuous tidbits of information are what matter. So having a one-off story, a huge piece of content online, a long story, that's not going to get the results. But having small bits of information, having them be recurring. So different topics, you know, sharing different topics. I know Green Story, for example, has great content. And it's content that's based about sharing their knowledge and teaching people things and letting people come back to them again thinking, hey, these people know what they're talking about. So that's what should be the driver. And again, having it be the content placed across different channels is a good way to create that visibility. And as you know, Eric said, focus on the connection, because the connection is what is going to have retention. So I fully agree with what you guys were saying about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And Eric and Lauren both said it very eloquently. I once heard someone describe it that building a relationship with a customer is kind of like a date, right? You don't go on the first date and be like, well, I mean, you do, but the more genteel way is to go out on a date and get to know someone and say, hey, let's make another date and get to, you know, like, or you don't ask someone out for coffee and say like, let's get married or let's have a kid together. You know, like there's little ways to just build that trust and to give people an opportunity to actually interact with you. And content doesn't need to be scary. Content can be broken down into small pieces, and there's so much amazing information online for people to really build their content chops and muscles. And so don't be scared. And the thing is, don't be scared to reach out and ask questions of other brands. I mean, I put myself out there and say, if people have questions, they could reach out. Thanks. They can reach out to me even through Brave Souls, and I can point them towards some things. But one of my things has always been, I'm never scared to ask for help for someone. Someone can always say no, but there are other people who've gone before you who are also very generous. And so don't be scared to ask other people for insights on things too.
Yeah, totally. Just a like education plug here from Shopify. We have so much content online that's 100% free. And a lot of it is about, you know, things that you're mentioning, Christal, like the marketing funnel. Like the top part of the marketing funnel is going on a date, and then eventually you convert them. And so talking about how you can splice your content across that marketing funnel. So you can take a look online if you're looking for more information there. Okay, so let me open it up. There's been a couple questions here. I'm just going to pull them up. Okay, for small brick and mortar mission-driven retail community stores who were building strong, loyal community support in person, what are your top suggestions for maintaining their community connection and staying afloat during this time? Great question.
So if I could go have a crack at that, and sorry, I think I lost everybody there for about 20 seconds because my internet went off. But one of the things I also want to kind of touch on the previous content question, and this is actually highly related, is go with the mission. And I've said this before, and it's something that, you know, for the Green Stories work for us a lot, because it's easy to create content and create engagement when you know what your mission is, you know what your vision is, and you can just build stuff around that. So if you're a small brand like that, it's easy to tell that story about, you know, what you're doing as a small brand and what your mission is, and just build things around that. And if that's your guiding light, that can inform your supplier decisions, your collaboration decisions, your content decisions, even some of the channels that you operate with moving forward. The other thing I would say is, like, whether you're a small or a big brand, you're getting more traffic now than ever before. Like I can almost guarantee. So this is a good time to figure out what are the channels that work for you and start experimenting a little bit. You know, what Eric said about the leaky board was like a great example. Okay, you're finding out your you know, return customer rate isn't that high. You know, people aren't coming back to your site. So maybe you need to fix that. The other thing would be content mapping, like trying to see like, okay, you have your big blog content. How do you post it for all the other channels? You can't have that same stuff coming in your Instagram stories where people spend 2 seconds going for it. So how do you kind of map, especially if you're building an inbound strategy, how do you map your customer journey, and how do you map the content to align with the customer journey, depending on the attention, the type of customer, and the stage of customer consideration that they're in when they're interacting with that content.
Anyone else
So,
before I go to that?
yeah.
Okay.
I might, yeah, sorry. I guess on the Q&A that the question that was put there, I kind of wanted to shoot that back to you, Katie, because like that's a Shopify question in a sense at its core, because Shopify is doing such amazing stuff between brick and mortars and online, and especially now has been crazy responsive to the challenge of that brick and mortar retailers are facing. So do you have any recommendations that you would give that person who's asking the question?
Yeah, I mean, I like the piece about, you know, the community piece and constantly being relevant, top of mind for them, whether or not they can come into your store. It's a great chance for you to just, you know, provide knowledge, provide content to keep, you know, those relationships alive. A lot of what we've done as a company, obviously we have added some technical pieces like gift cards that you can add to your store. The curbside pickup, the porch deliveries and things like that, those are all very possible now from a technical point of view on the shops and things like that. And what we've seen actually is a lot of business communities, whether it be on a street, in a small town, they're all coming together and they're creating these online marketplaces. So whether it's they're creating a directory of their little neighborhood and the shops so that you can shop local, or they're actually, you know, pulling products and putting it onto a web page through Shopify. A lot of these types of business associations are doing things like that. We actually have a full onboarding program for small communities who want to work together on stuff like this. So please feel free to reach out to me if you do want to collaborate with other business owners, but definitely like that focus on shopping local, and just being present in your local community we've seen a lot of really great success with businesses. I'm based out of Ottawa, and that's definitely been something I've seen a lot of great success in, is these businesses, you know, they're turning to their neighbor and saying, hey, you know, let's build this thing together so that we can stay afloat during this time. And it's been incredibly successful. And the people in their neighborhood have just had such a heart for them that they're coming out and they just want to support their local businesses. So I think that's been really great. So those are some of the things that we're working on. But again, feel free to reach out to me either on LinkedIn, or I guess you don't have my email, but I'm happy to provide any answers to some of those questions if they're more technical or some strategy building as well. Thanks for
We'll
that,
share
Eric.
details with the audience as well. Like at the end of all of this, if any of the panel wants to be contacted, we'll make sure we share the details.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'd just like throw in a little anecdote on that too, is that I think if you are a brick and mortar business right now and you're considering how to build community in person, and you can't build community in person right now, well, then you're in a bit of a tricky situation. So like, I wouldn't worry if you can still be a great brick and mortar focused business, but communicate with your community by email as well. So, I mean, I would say that baby steps in that sense, like do try to capture the email addresses of your best customers and start by just sending out honest emails. Even if it's not a fancy email, it's just literally, you know, here, I'm the founder, this is what we're doing this month. Hey, if you need something, you know, shoot me an email and we'll set it up to deliver it at the back. You know, baby steps in that sense are great. And you can be an amazing in-person retailer who communicates with their customers on Instagram, on social media, through email. And that's a great step. And I don't think it compromises your status as a, you know, brick and mortar business.
Totally. Yeah. And I think this idea of like providing experiences, because obviously people come to your shop to have an experience in person at your store that you've created for them. And so what I've seen too is that running events has never been easier or cheaper. You don't need to buy food. You don't need to rent a venue. You just get onto Zoom, and you can have all your community come and join you. I've seen a lot of, let's say like gyms are doing this, and some other brick and mortar stores are doing these like virtual shopping events. So just creating experiences online, you just need to get a little bit creative and think outside the box. I'm looking at the time. We've gone a bit over, and I think some people have dropped off. There are a few more good questions. Akhil, I just want to know kind of where you're at. Do we want to wrap up, or do we want to?
We can still go ahead. I think Christal and Lauren might want to weigh in on that previous question as well, and maybe after that we can kind of wrap up.
So yeah, just loop in terms of the brick and mortar. I think there's no need to be afraid of, even if you have a brick and mortar, and kind of moving online. And I know Katie was giving some really good advice on how to do so. And so was Eric, in terms of getting the email addresses, staying in contact. But there's no harm in moving that kind of offline experience and moving it online. And of course, Katie had some really great tips on how certain businesses are doing it, gyms, et cetera. But even if you are moving online, you can create your branded experience, be it through social media, be it through a shop on Shopify or on your other website. There are different opportunities there, but that can kind of parallel the experience that they would have, in your store and online. So customer service is huge, being available, being flexible, but also being agile as well. So even in the move to, from offline to online, look at your options and don't be afraid of it, because at the end of the day, every business right now needs to future-proof itself moving forward. And there's so many different opportunities to do so, be it through media or be it through an online shop or online visibility. There's tons of potential there.
I agree. Sorry, I dropped off there for a second. I agree. I think this is actually just a really exciting time because it's a great time to actually really transition and to think differently about how you can continue to build those connections. And that can be done through everything from the virtual shopping experiences. We're even doing that with Brave Souls, but I see some brick and mortar stores that are doing that. And I think that's a great idea. Personalizing things and just, I mean, everybody's in this together. So just begin to experiment and see what is resonating with people, and just don't be scared to put yourself out there. There's nobody that's waiting to judge you. In fact, I think you'd be probably pleasantly surprised that people will probably react really well because they want to hear from you, and they probably are concerned about your business and want to stay connected. So I think it's a great time now more than ever.
That's really good advice. Really inspirational. Just like get out of your own way and get in front of your customers. I love it. Okay, so I'm just pulling up the last question here that we had. How do you mobilize your customers to create collective action and call for systemic change? That's an interesting one.
That's a big one.
Yeah, I can jump in if you want. I'm just going to sound like a broken record. Sorry, Christal, do you want to say something?
No, I froze. You go first, because I was
sorry.
about to say, is everybody still there? Okay, you go first.
Yes, I think I'm just going to sound like a broken record here, but it's basically my mission, right? Like if you can kind of demonstrate that you're really putting your thought behind the mission and you're going for it, I think they're much more likely to follow you through that. With that, and that's where authenticity, transparency, and really showing the impact that you can have by participating in your mission really comes into play. And also making it simple for the customers to participate. Like it can't be something huge and vague. You had to show it in concrete terms, in a credible way as well. And I think that's something that we do a lot of green story in working with brands, is like show what the impacts are in concrete, credible terms, which makes it easier for somebody to participate in kind of these kind of things. So I think absolutely kind of define your mission, define your vision, and just kind of then show what are the steps that your customers can take to participate in that.
People want quick wins, right? Everybody loves quick wins. And I really liked what Eric said earlier in our chat about how they were sharing different things, for example, for Earth Day, or different ways that they were communicating, giving people quick wins. And that's a really important thing too, because when I'm looking for something, and something that sticks with me and keeps me coming back to a brand, is when I feel like they've given me something that I now have gained. It's like they've given me a piece of knowledge that I can now turn around and put into my life in some way. So don't think about it in terms of all big ethereal concepts. Give people quick wins. Help them feel good about the choices that they're making, even in the simplest of ways. And if you give them the opportunity to feel good about those small choices, you're going to begin to build a much better trust relationship with them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree very much with Christal on that. Like the big, you know, when I see that, it's a short, that question, or that way of looking at it, is cutting out all of the stuff that needs to happen in the middle. And the stuff that needs to happen between now and systemic change is really the most important part of it. And it's the hardest part of it. So, you know, we don't think as a brand in terms of systemic change day to day, because if we did, we'd probably just stay in bed, because it's just such a huge concept. It's so hard to wrap our heads around changing these big systems. You know, it's a huge ship and it has to turn around slowly. What we think about is exactly what Christal's saying, is what can you do today? We work with some fantastic influencers too that have happen to have a similar way of looking at things. You know, what about not giving yourself a hard time about the things that you haven't done, or the piece of, you know, the water bottle that you drank out of because you had to at a meeting, or, you know, think about the constructive things you can do. Do one of those things every day and then build on that. That's how we get to systemic change. It's not perfect. It's messy. It's more of a maze than a straight line. But that's truly how I believe we get there. It's just day by day.
If I can jump in with a final thought, is just be loud and proud. I think what I've noticed working with social entrepreneurs and sustainable brands is it's still a new concept, this idea of social commerce and commerce for good. And so people, governments, they're all trying to wrap their heads around this idea. So just constantly be out there, be excited about who you are, and continue telling that amazing story. And also just remember, maybe there's folks in the audience that don't have a sustainable brand, but they're thinking about it. It's like, there's no such thing as 100% sustainable company. So just do those small things, like Christal was saying, quick wins. So, you know, maybe you don't have plastic packaging, or maybe you don't send out your t-shirts wrapped in plastic with all sorts of packaging and things like that. Or maybe you choose to use hemp instead of synthetic fibers. I don't know. But you don't need to go above and beyond and do everything. Like, start with that one thing that you know you can do really well, and then, you know, over time you can build on it. But yeah, again, start small, make those habits. I think that that's super important as well. Anyone have any final thoughts before we wrap up here? I could talk on this all day. I don't want to leave.
Like from our side, it's just simply like, again, really, this is a great time for any company anywhere to kind of really double down on your vision and you know what you're doing, and communicate that to your audience. I mean, COVID-19 is a very challenging time for every business, but if you are a mission and, you know, vision-driven brand, this is a unique time for you and a unique opportunity for you. So, like, focus on that and don't let it slip.
Love it. All right. Well, we will wrap up there. I just want to say thank you so much to the panelists. You guys are incredible. I'm sure the audience loved hearing everything that you guys had to share. I'm sure there's lots for them to take away and action this afternoon in their business, which is awesome. And a quick thank you to the audience. Thank you, guys. I know we went a little bit over time, but thank you so much for joining us. From what I understand, Akhil, this will be emailed out, the recording of this. So if you didn't take notes, no worries. You can access it later when Green Story sends us out. And yeah, if you have any questions for myself or any of the panelists, I'm sure you can find us all online, and knowing this group of people, we'd be more than happy to give you guys a hand.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say, like, from Green Story side, thank you to everyone who took part in this panel. It was such an amazing conversation, and also the audience. It was so engaging. You had so many, questions and comments on the chat, and I'm pretty sure we didn't get to 80% of them. So for the ones that we couldn't get to, please keep an eye out on social media. We'll be sharing recording summaries and snippets. I'll also be doing an Instagram live in about 15 minutes. So anybody on the panel is welcome to join, but just be me with Anita from our company otherwise. Or you can also reach out to us at Green Story Inc. on any of the social media channels. And I'd also like to note this is the final panel in our inaugural New Normal series. We will be having a few more of these in the coming months. And I'd like to thank everyone who's attended so far and all the panelists again. So if there are any kind of topics that you'd like to be considered, drop us a note and we'll definitely get to it. So once again, thank you everyone, and goodbye for now.
Thanks, Akhil. Thanks, Katie. Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Akhil. See you
Bye.
guys.
Thank
Bye.
you for
Thank you
joining.
guys.
Bye.
Have a good
Bye.
weekend.
Bye.
Bye.